What made you decide to write this book? And you say that you've been working on this for 10 years. What led you to really do this remarkable deep dive into the subject, which is obviously very hard to research because so much of it is secret or is kind of shrouded?
Well, I realized that we were being sprayed from the moment I saw my first chemtrail that I was able to verify. And it was just a non-starter for me. It was just a big red line that was crossed. You know what I mean? Because I was looking at all these other conspiracies and things, and these were things that you could basically avoid if you wanted to.
Hmm.
Like, let's say you're looking into the mafia or something, you know what I mean? You don't have to deal with the mafia. You can go do other things, you know what I
Right.
mean? And those are, they constantly engage in conspiracies.
Hmm.
But the chemtrails thing was something that was unavoidable.
It's involuntary. What we
Yeah.
look at is like compulsory medicine or use of pesticides or non-labeling of GMO products, right? This is sort of, you don't even know what's happening to you, and yet it could be literally really having a huge impact on your life. So,
Yeah, and I'd like to clarify that it's actually been more than 10 years. I started in 2009. That's when I made my first bone. I came out with the California Air Resources Board data showing contamination of the air that we breathe statewide. And then I did a big weather modification investigation for 2 years. And I've basically been following up on that original weather modification investigation since then. And
wow.
I came out with the findings of my original weather modification investigation in 2012. And then so, but then, the book was the set, what is basically this. There was actually a precursor to this. It was my self-published edition, which came out in 2020. And that was basically the milestone that I was looking for that had everything in there. But as soon as that came out, I started doing more research. I did another maybe year and a half of chemtrail research after the book came out in 2020. And then I've, since done more. So, I mean, all in total, I really only took like maybe 2 or 3 years off to write a couple of other books in this whole 17 years. And it's not like I completely put down the chemtrail research in the 2 or 3 years that I took to write the other two books that I wrote, The Fall of San Francisco and From Little Acorns. It was always something that I was tending to.
Hmm.
But then when the Tennessee bill came out, when they started
Yeah.
pushing these anti-geoengineering bills on a state
Yeah.
level, I said to myself, okay, it's time to
Yeah.
get back in this because things are moving. Because
Yeah.
prior to that, the
Right.
space kind of died down a little bit.
Yeah.
That's so I went and did something else for a little while, but it really wasn't that long that I went and did something
Yeah.
else. I've
Wow.
basically been researching this thing nonstop since 2009.
So, one of the points that you make in the book is that there's a connection when you put all this particulate matter in the atmosphere. There's a connection with electromagnetic radiation. And one of the things that we focus on here at Children's Health Defense are the hazards of wireless radiation, and that it's essentially unregulated. There's not really informed consent. We don't really know everything that it's doing. How is there a connection with electromagnetic radiation and this spraying that's happening?
The most documented connection are things that you can see in the HAARP patents that talk about the
What's HAARP? Tell us
oh yeah,
first what HAARP.
excuse me, high frequency active auroral research project. It's a what's known as an ionospheric heater. It's up in Alaska. It was the big first big powerful one. So there's a group of patents that are associated with HAARP, the facility up there, and they came out around the time that the first version of HAARP came out, and those speak to HAARP's ability to move air masses around with electromagnetic energy. And my science advisor is an expert in the field of electromagnetic energy, specifically how it affects the human body, and she's been getting on this thing about there's a map that you can access online that a lot of other people have been accessing as well, but she recently just found it. It was a big revelation for her that shows NEXRAD activity. And
What is NEXRAD
yeah,
activity?
NEXRAD are weather radar stations that there's a whole bunch of them across the country. I think there's maybe 50 of them, 40 or 50 of them across the country, if I'm not mistaken. There's a map that you can see and see
Mhm.
their range and everything. And Jenny, with her, I am unqualified to make the statement that yes, NextRad is doing this, but Jenny is.
Who
So
is Ginny?
Jenny
What's her?
Silcox. Jenny,
Silcock.
Jenny Silcox, she was in the program with me on the Attack on Food and Farmers Symposium with me, her, and Marvin Herndon. You know, we were followed by James Corbett and RFK. Merrill Nass organized that whole thing.
Mhm.
But
Right.
you know, she tells me, and we're, you know, we continue to look into this. And she just did an appearance on another show called Agent X11 that's available on Rumble, and where that was her thing for that show, was talking about how NEXRAD is having an effect upon atmosphere, particles in the atmosphere and water vapor, and, you know, basically just manipulating weather systems.
Mhm.
So you know, I intend to look further into that. The minute you start talking about electromagnetic energy, stuff gets really complicated really quick. So you know, you know, I'm proceeding with caution here,
Sure.
and
Sure.
saying what I can say. And
Sure.
when Ginny, and who's a career expert on this, tells me that, and you know, there's a lot of other people saying this as well. When Ginny tells me that NEXRAD is the local radar facilities are doing this. So you have HAARP up in Alaska with doing the big heavy lifting, and we can get into what the heavy lifting is. But NEXRAD is doing it on a more local and a more regional basis.